Good evening, everyone. Harrison Bernstein here, founder and executive director of Soldiers to Sidelines. Thanks for joining us this evening for our weekly webinar series. So as usual, would be remiss if we didn't mention how grateful we are to our community of veterans, service members, and professional coaches and partners who support all of our soldier coaches. So please follow or share our social media on Facebook or Twitter. Like us, just hit those buttons and show your support, because really none of our support to our soldier coaches would be possible without the gifts and contributions from you. So our soldier coach legacy depends on your continued financial support. Visit our website, soldierstosidelines.org. Make a donation if you really like what we're doing. And tonight, we are so happy to have Zach Bovair, assistant men's basketball coach at Army West Point, and he'll be discussing basketball offensive strategy throughout the world. So it's offensive concepts that he's been really paying attention to in his research in this past offseason. And for those of you who don't know, Coach Bovair is in his 5th season as assistant men's basketball coach at West Point. And prior to Army, Zach was an assistant at University of Maine, Fairleigh Dickinson University, and Iona College. So with 10 years of collegiate basketball coaching experience, we are grateful to have Coach Bovair show us the basketball scenes that have captured his attention lately throughout the world. So thank you so much for educating us tonight, Coach.
No, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm grateful for to Lee and Harrison for letting me be a part of this. It's a organization that I just am finding out about, and it's unbelievable. And and I was pumped to be on it because of the connection that I have with Army West Point and the opportunity I get to represent one of the finest institutions there is in the world, and then by larger extension, the United States Army and the United States military. And it's something that I don't take lightly, to be honest. It's humbling, the opportunity I get to talk to talented young people about the opportunity to serve their country. As Harrison was talking about, in 2016, I made the decision to leave University of Maine and come down here. And it's funny, I looked at it as simply a career opportunity, as the opportunity to work in the Patriot League. And I'll be like, I made that decision very selfishly. And I kind of stumbled into, honestly, the greatest opportunity I could have asked for, and not only working with a great staff here at Army in terms of the men's basketball staff, but just the opportunity to represent West Point, the opportunity to represent the United States Army as a whole. And so that's made me so much better. And the people I've interacted with here on the military side of things at West Point, they've made me better. I mean, some of the best leadership lessons that I've learned in my life have been from the orb of successful people, impressed people that operate around our program. So when Harrison and Lee reached out to do this, I mean, the answer is, heck yeah, I'd love to do it. So before we get into some film, I just wanted to talk about some things that I've spent time working on, and just different things, different thoughts I have in my mind that jump out. The first one is share conversation. I know a lot of people on this broadcast are, first getting into coaching or trying to find a way to segue into their first full-time coaching role. And the best piece of advice I ever got was when I was a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old sophomore, junior in college. I was actually working a 5-star basketball camp for Lee. And in the summers, I reached out to Tom Crean and I asked him for advice on getting into coaching. And he gave me advice that changed the rest of my life. And the idea when people talk about college coaching is they always reference players. And they talk about recruiting. You got to get in with players. You got to get in with the coaches that know players. And I'm not saying that's not recruiting. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, players don't matter. They do matter. But I think there's been a negative impact by how often that advice is pounded into young coaches, that they think the whole thing is just getting players. And I think coaching has suffered as a result of it. But also, I think guys have pigeonholed themselves as just recruiters. And the advice that Coach Crean said is everyone just insistent and is just focused on getting players and recruiting being the end-all be-all. At the end of the day, there is still a space in this game, in this profession, for guys that can study the game, guys that care about coaching, care about teaching, and have a role in that. Now, how I operate and how I think about things, and I took this from Tim Kite, who runs part of Focus 3 podcast, which if you're not listening to is just a phenomenal weekly podcast. It's you set a goal for yourself and you figure out what skills do I need in order to achieve that goal. And then what am I doing to work systematically each day to achieve those skills? So goal, skills I need to achieve that goal, daily systematic approach to achieving those skills. So Coach Crean, bring it back. Zach, you need to spend time focusing on coaching, spending time thinking deeply about the game. And his piece of advice was watch an hour worth of film every day. And even early on, I struggled because I felt a little dumb at first because I didn't know what to look at. And he said, Zach, just start a notebook and just write down what you see, write down what you think happens a lot, write down what, things you're liking. And he just encouraged me to do that. And it's the best advice I've ever gotten. All right. And I've tried to, I don't know how many, I think I can count on single digits, me missing on the number of days I've missed where I haven't watched that hour film. And that has been so important for me. And I'll pass that along to coaches as they begin their path. All right. Don't get wrapped up in just people saying coaching, recruiting. Make yourself a coach. All right. Think deeply about the game, study the game, and watch the film. That's the way you're going to get better at it. And this first slide, as we kind of just jump through here, just a couple thoughts I have. Just this first slide is just, is talking about this, is the video. All right. Obviously, if you're showing up at 8:30 on a Tuesday night to watch me stumble through this presentation, obviously you care about the game, and obviously you care about what you're doing. There is nothing that's going to move the needle for your team and your team's performance this year. There's nothing that will do that more than watching your practice, watching the film of each game and watching it over and over and over again. That's what's going to drive improvement more than anything else. You're not going to hear me say a certain X and O concept or show you a certain drill tonight that's going to do more than you watching practice every day. You watching your practice over and again, studying your players. KYP, know your personnel. Be an expert on your personnel. Be an expert on your team, all right? And there's so many ways to say, there's so many excuses within that, but they're going down by the day, all right? If you don't have the money for a camera, set up your iPad. If you don't have someone up there to move it from side to side, just do it on one end. Film your practice every day. Invest in your players by watching the film and then going over it with them. All right. Over on the right, I have a lie detector machine because we call the film is the truth machine. All right. Write this one down, coaches. This is this will be up in my office the day I become a head coach. All right. What you see on tape is what you're coaching. What you see on tape is what you're coaching. Same concept said, probably maybe a little bit differently. All right. That one is from Don James, former head coach at University of Washington, the guy that mentored Nick Saban. All right. What you see on tape is what you're coaching. Billy Donovan said a little bit differently. You're either coaching it or allowing it to happen. So whatever you want to talk about with your team that you don't like, understand you're either coaching it that way or you've let them do it that way. So that's the truth machine. What you've said on the tape, what you see on tape is what you're coaching. All right. Something that's really helped my coaching this year in game. I stole this from Joe Madden. Great book, The Cubs Way by Tom Verducci. The best stuff is about Joe Madden. He writes right on the top of that, top of the right-hand corner of the scorecard here. He wrote DBAFF. Don't be a frickin' fan. That's the edited version. All right. Don't be a frickin' fan. All right. 90%, Kevin Eastman point, 90% of what you should be doing as an assistant coach should be analytical. 10% is emotional. Don't be a frickin' fan, all right? The hooting, the hollering, the jumping up and down on the bench, that's for the guys behind you. That's for the crowd. Ultimately, you need to calm yourself down where you are focused and you are thinking about how can I make the players on the court better. Don't be jumping up and down. Don't be yelling at the refs. Don't be a frickin' fan. And I wrote that on the top corner of our play card this year, stealing that from Joe Madden, and it helped me a ton. I was calmer during the game, and I could then help our players and be thinking through the lens of how can I help these guys? Along the same concept, maybe a little bit different, all right? When stuff isn't working, what's your order of adjustments? Here's Doc Rivers, and I really like it, all right? Because he doesn't want to jump right to changing everything. They've invested way too much time in the offseason, in the season. They've watched too much film. They've spent too much time in the scouting reports to change right away. So when stuff isn't working for Doc Rivers, here's his order of adjustment. First time out, we're going to focus on doing it better, all right? We're going to do it better. We're going to execute our coverage better. We're gonna hold our screen and execute that middle pick and roll better. All right, that's the first one. All right, second order of adjustment: do it harder. All right. Hey, is our tempo, is our intensity high enough? All right. If we're doing it right, all right, maybe it's that our intensity isn't high enough. Third, again, we've put too much time into our scouting report, too much time into our plan to be intentional to just change right away. But ultimately, if we're doing it better, all right, if we're executing it, and then we're doing it hard enough, at some point you need answers for your players. All right. We all know that gut in our stomach. All right. When the stuff we're doing isn't working, you better be ready to adjust. And at that point, you're going to do it different. 1, do it better. 2, do it harder. 3, do it different. All right. That's the order of adjustment Doc Rivers is going to make to a game in a game if something isn't working. I think it's very important that you work your way through it. And for you, maybe it's different. Maybe you disagree with Doc Rivers, but my thing is this: spend time right now thinking about that, thinking about what's our order of adjustment going to be. All right. We are obsessed with turnovers here at Army West Point. Obsessed. All right. So I spend way too much time talking about it. We try to play fast. We played the second fastest pace in the country this year. And within that, we are trying to play fundamental basketball at speed. We don't want this ball going around the gym. The phrase we use in our program, the ball is the program. We stole that from PJ Fleck with Minnesota football. The ball is the program. When you have the basketball in your hands, you have our program in your hands at that time. All right. So we talk about it a ton. The ball is the program. And we study our turnovers. And the way we've broken it up for us is we've decided, and we really try to study our turnovers, because as you break down turnovers, you start to see as a program, you kind of have a blind spot, and each player has a blind spot. So we break down turnovers in 2 ways. We talk about decision turnovers, that's on the left side of the screen, and we talk about skill turnovers on the right side of the screen. So your skill turnovers, there you see them listed there. Those are your gathers. Those are your off-target passes. Those are your ball toughness. Those are your catches. All right, Bob Knight. I still, nothing you see today is going to be stuff that I've come up with. All of this is stuff I've studied and I've taken from other people. So when you think about all this new age stuff, all right, think about this. Like Bob Knight had a lot figured out back in the 60s when he was a 25-year-old head coach at West Point, and he was obsessed with catching the basketball. His teams would lose a point in practice in a scrimmage if you bobble the pass. So catches is a big skill area for us. Triple threat and illegal screens. And my point is this: as you chart these, you're going to start to see that maybe Bill Smith, he might struggle with gathers. And so and as you accumulate these stats over the course of practice, after 3 weeks, you might look at Bill's stats. And you might say, hey, Bill's got 8 gather turnovers. And this is where you can leverage your assistants. Hey, make sure you're getting with Bill before practice. Let's do our gather drill. Let's make sure he's landing on 2 feet and he's starting and stopping without traveling. All right. And maybe Josh Thomas, all right, his problem is over on the decision side and he keeps over penetrating. Let's make sure he sees those over penetration turnovers. My point is this: if you do this, you're going to start to see as a program, there are some blind spots you have in your teaching. In this chart, and being able to tally this on a spreadsheet, this will be able to tell you and give you feedback. Hey, here is something that you need to work on as a program. Here is something you need to work on individually with Jamie. All right. Here's something else you might need to work on with Luke. And this is a great way to think about it. And this is something we talk about a ton. Another area with turnovers, I'll talk about 2 different areas as I'm on the discussion of turnovers. All right. Actually, I'll talk about 3 things. 1, I mentioned earlier, you need to be able to start and stop your dribble without traveling. You need to be able to catch the ball and be fundamental in your footwork. And then you need to be able to end your dribble without turning the basketball over, without traveling. Elite players are elite at stopping. Elite players are elite at stopping. LeBron James is really good. One of the things he does best is stopping with the basketball. He doesn't travel. He doesn't turn it over. He's elite at stopping with the ball, stopping without traveling, stopping without turning over the basketball. The other two things, if you watch your turnovers, I guarantee you this, watch your turnovers and look at them through two lenses. You're going to see more of them in one. All right. One, driving the ball back where it came from. Basketball, understand this. Basketball is not a game of never and always. Write that one down, coaches. Basketball is not a game of never and always. I'm not going to say it's never the right decision to bring the ball back where it came from, because ultimately sometimes that's where the space is. But the majority of times, that is not the direction you want to go with your drive. You want to go away from where you got it. So when you rewatch your turnovers from last year, I guarantee you this, there's going to be a big chunk of them that arose from driving the ball back where it came from. Second area where you're going to see some turnovers is trying to drive a drive. All right. And I'll explain more of that. And the person that does it best, the team that teaches the best, is the Toronto Raptors, talking about not driving a drive. I'll explain a little bit what that means. Before we get into film, last thing. All right. Some of my favorite books. There's some military books on here. Team of Teams is fantastic. General Stanley McChrystal, West Point graduate. He summed up coaching unintentionally better than any. He had the best metaphor ever for coaching when he talked about the difference between being a gardener and creating an environment for your players to be successful, as opposed to trying to be that chess master of moving the pieces around and trying to dictate where they go all the time. As a coach, be a gardener. Don't be a chess master. His idea, and maybe it's a little bit more of Jocko Willink, his idea of commander's intent is essentially, I think, the perfect version of coaching, is getting your players to understand commander's intent and not overcoaching their minute-by-minute maneuvers, and just getting them to understand what's the commander's intent and giving them freedom to play fast and make decisions based on the information they're getting at real time. Smart Take from the Strong. You know what that is? That's a great toilet book. Put that one by your toilet. Why? Because you can digest it in about 90-second to 150-second, depending on what kind of Indian food you ate earlier in the day. All right. In those kind of intervals. All right. It's a fantastic book. All right. It's just small pieces of basketball knowledge. Mindset by Carol Dweck. There's not a book that impacts my day-to-day coaching more than mindset. All right. It all gets down to what you coach, what you praise, and what you criticize. All right. There's this whole idea that people misunderstood about the sandwich philosophy of compliment, criticism, compliment. That's inaccurate. And it's spread through our teaching in our coaching professions as being the gospel. And it's just not right. It's not correct. It gives people bad information. And so it's funny. Stan Van Gundy reads this book and he travels all the way out to Stanford for an hour-and-a-half discussion with Carol Dweck. And he shows up to Stanford to ask one question. The question is this: how much do I praise? How much do I criticize? And he flew 4.5 hours to ask this question. And she says, "You're asking the wrong question. It's not how much you praise, how much you criticize. It's what you praise and what you criticize. If you praise someone's natural talent, they start to guard themselves and if you praise their smarts, all right, they start to protect that idea of them being smart and stop taking risks. Whereas if you praise their willingness to take chances, that is then what is going to be rewarded." Great concept. All right, I'm going to move through these quickly. Gridiron Genius, read it. Michael Lombardi spent time around Al Davis, Bill Belichick, and Bill Walsh. All right, here are the leadership lessons he learned from it. Great stories. It's fantastic. What You Do Is Who You Are by Ben Horowitz. Fantastic book. All right. Culture has become this big buzzword in our industry, and I think it's gotten away from what it actually means. Culture ultimately is what you do every single day. Ben Horowitz does that really well. Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. Terrific book. Really good, and essentially gets down to, is your culture psychologically safe? Are the people underneath you psychologically safe? Do they feel safe enough to take risks and take chances? I won't say much more about it. Read Score Takes Care of Itself. Read it. It's an unbelievable book. It's fantastic. And then the last thing I'll say is this, and maybe shame on me because I don't have any listed. Rather than reading coaching books, read teaching books. Read books based on talking about teaching and being a better teacher. All right. There's a great book, Teach Like a Champion. They list 49 different strategies on things that work in the classroom, because ultimately coaching is teaching. All right. Pete Newell, write this one down. The game is overcoached, undertaught. The game is overcoached, undertaught. So therefore, become a better teacher. Coaching, lots of times, it's dripped in survivorship bias. And so I think teaching books are more practical ways that you can improve as a teacher. All right. Before we go into film, I see some questions in the chat. How are we doing that? Do you want me to read these or what works best?
So don't worry about it, Coach. Keep going. As
Awesome.
folks have questions, I will just naturally interject into your pauses and shoot them. What I've been doing is kind of like highlighting what you've been saying in the chat, like the key points. So
awesome. Awesome. I saw it coming through. So I just saw that number flashing. So if people had questions, I want to hit them. I'm trying to think of anything else there. That's covered everything. Let's get some film. So what I'm going to show today is I've really tried kind of going along the lines of trying for deep work. In the past, I found myself in the off season jumping around a little too much and not focusing enough on specific teams. And this year, I felt sometimes by doing that, my knowledge was a little bit surface knowledge at the level. And this year, I really wanted to adjust and really study specific teams and try to immerse myself in the program for a week, 10 days, two weeks, whatever it was, and really try to get to understand what makes these guys tick, rather than just being able to say, hey, here are Oklahoma City's best 3 pick and roll plays. I really want to immerse myself and said, how does this system work? And now and not that we're going to take all of what OKC does on offense and bring it to Army West Point, but what are 2 or 3 things that they do that they're successful with that we can bring to our program? So I ended up choosing about 10 different teams. And my goal today is to share share these projects or share the highlights of these projects with you here today. So we're going to touch on different teams and the biggest things that jumped out to me. As an offensive guy, I really stayed on this offense side of the ball. So the first team I studied, or one of the teams I studied, the first one we're going to look at is Auburn. All right. And they are just terrific in transition. Again, probably going back to my first point, it starts with having very good players that are great in transition. So if you have players that are more suited to walk it up style, don't play fast. If you have Auburn's guys where they have a bunch of dudes, bunch of athletic skilled guys, great time to play fast. Something that stood out to me, 2 things stood out to me with Auburn. First thing, outlet depth. All right. So they want to catch this outlet farther up the court in a great way. If you want to play fast, do yourself a favor. Go through your games, all right, and watch your defensive rebounds, all right, and watch where that outlet is going coming off that defensive rebound. And so watch these a little bit with Auburn. Watch how close these outlets are getting to half court. Watch this. Look at that. A stride away from half court. Look at what this does to spearhead their attack. Look at this outlet depth. Look where he's catching that outlet. And look how his feet are moving towards the other rim. You want to speed up your fast break. Think about your outlet depth. Think about how close to half court you're getting your outlets, and think about if you can get those outlets where that guy is moving towards the other rim on his catch and his eyes are up. How deep are our outlets? One year at Iona College, where I got the opportunity to work for just a brilliant coach in Tim Kluse, who just retired this past year, who is just an unbelievable coach, and he's he was so early on some things, even the analytics era. He was talking about shooting 30, 43s in a game all the way back into the 90s. But he was obsessed with how deep we were getting our outlets. And we had a kid one year, we had a really good offense team that was playing really fast with Scott Machado. In the level at which Scott Machado would receive his outlet passes, that set our break up. Because ultimately, if you want to have a great break, don't focus on the end of the break. Focus on the start. Focus on the first 3 steps in transition, and focus on the depth of your outlet there at the start. All right. Something else that I really like that Auburn does is this pass across in transition. Because what is a good defense doing? All right, in transition, In transition, a good transition defense is trying to build a wall on ball side. So here they're trying to, Tennessee is going to work to try to build a wall in front of the ball handler, and they're going to try to put 5 guys on ball side and stop the initial push of the ball. And watch how here with this pass across, you detonate that wall teams are trying to build in transition. Now, that's also a dumb play. Coach Wilkins on our staff always says casinos are built on people that gamble. So here, this guy gambles, and and we can build a casino off that. But here, all right, watch how this pass across, all right, makes a team pay for playing good transition defense, trying to build a wall. Again, another dumb gamble. Again, casinos are built on guys that want to gamble. Here's a great clip coming up here. All right, watch how the D is loading up ball side, and watch how this pass across makes them pay. Look at that. Look at all those guys that are trying to load the ball side, playing good transition defense, stopping the initial thrust of the ball, and watch what Auburn does here. They throw the ball across, and now think about this. The defense shifted to load up ball side on one side of the floor, balls pass across. Now all of a sudden they need to come all the way back and flip their hips to now load up on the new ball side. So those are the two things that I really saw that I loved with Auburn's transition. All right, depth of your outlets, early pass across. All right, good concept here. All right, good just general concept. You get a 45 drive or a middle drive. All right, we're looking to cut the ball baseline. All right, if you drive the ball baseline, we're looking to cut across the 45. I'll show you film on what this means, but this is just a good premise to base your guy to talk about with your guys. If we're driving the ball to the middle of the floor, all right, from a 45, we're going to baseline cut. All right, if we're driving the ball baseline, we're going to 45 cut. I'll talk about what that means. Here's a couple clips. Furman right here. This is their rule. All right, great offense coach Bob Ritchie. 45 drive triggers a baseline cut. Why is that open? Why is that open is because of how the game is changing. Because this guy here in the corner, as this ball is driven, he is showing help, but he's looking to get back to his man because the big thing right now is not giving up corner threes. So as his man gets back in front of the ball, he starts drifting out to take away the corner three. And we talk about 2 ships passing the night. He drifts out, we cut in. Middle drive, baseline cut. As he drifts out, we cut behind his head along the baseline. Baseline cut, guy still drifting out, cuts right behind his head. Here's another good rule, all right? If at any point your man, the guy that's guarding you, turns to look at the basketball, turns his vision away from you to look at the basketball, if when he looks back at you, you're still standing in the same spot, you screwed up. I'll say that one again. The guy that's guarding you, if he turns away from you and looks at the ball, when he turns back to look at you, if you're standing in the same spot, you screwed something up. All right? We want to be great. When we see the back of a head, we want to be great at cutting to the rim. So now baseline drive. On that baseline drive, we want to fill that corner. So now understand why this is open, just like how we talking about teaching the why, incredibly important. Again, that concept of becoming a better teacher. All right, teach the why. Why is this cut open? Baseline drive, help comes. So now we want to fill that corner. And if we fill that corner, what is the second guy, the second defender, this number 10 here on this clip, what does he have to do? He has to drop to take away that pass. As he drops to take away that pass, what's wide open? This cut right here. So baseline drive, 45 cut. Watch it right here. Baseline drive, drops, defender drops, take that away in the corner. .45 cut coming right down the pipe. All right. Couple more examples of it coming up. All right. Call this a D Wade cut. Same idea. Or well, same cut. I was just talking about baseline drive, cutting right down the 45. Here's a nice rule. All right. If you name something after an NBA player, your players are more likely to do it. All right. So by naming this a Dwayne Wade cut, all of a sudden they think it's cooler. Boom, it starts with, they start doing it more, and now they're effective with it. It's great if you have an athlete like that. You can do this off a post feed as well. He spins baseline, so that's a baseline drive. we're filling that weak side corner. All right. As that guy comes, all right, he's ready to shift away. Watch how this second guy, this second defender, starts anticipating this guy coming. So what's he do? He flattens out, and now we're coming right down the pipe. Baseline drive, 45 cut. Baseline drive, 45 cut. Coming right down there, open for the layup. D-Wade cut. Coming right down the pipe. Same idea, cuts right down there, and there's that guy coming down on that D-Wade cut. All right. My favorite cut, all right, my favorite cut, people always ask me, all right, joking, literally that question's never been asked, Zach, what's your favorite cut in the world? But if they were to ever ask me, it'd be this cut right here, because this is a next level, advanced level cut, all right? As we drive the ball baseline, we want to fill to that corner. So, all right, again, it's not never and always. I'm not saying anytime you drive the ball baseline, you got to be ready to cut on the 45. I really like that. But as teams get smarter and they start adjusting, all right, we're going to talk about, I'm actually going to show you the cut, and then I'll tell you why it works. All right. I haven't come up with a great name for this. I got to find an NBA player to name it after. But as teams adjust to start taking away the three, all right, and they start to drift out to take away that baseline drive, baseline drift pass, all right, watch Davis do it right here. A great cut is as that guy starts drifting out to take away the pass, just like we did for when we talked about earlier. As he starts drifting out, we cut in, all right? Scott Morrison, assistant coach of the Boston Celtics, calls us cutting the mouse. As that guy starts drifting out on that baseline drive, take away the baseline drift, we cut over the top, and you see how wide open it is. Why do we do that, and why does that make sense? Let's talk about it. Give me 1 second. All right. Why is that? All right. One rule that we have in our program. All right. One rule we have in our program is we never want to be 3 in a row. So right here, this is very good defense being played by number 12 here on the Pelicans. All right. That's this bottom guy down here. Once he recognizes that Jahlil Okafor has this drive pretty much bottled up, all right, he recognizes that help's not needed, and he starts drifting out to his man, all right, and he starts drifting out to his man, and as he does that, all of a sudden, these 3 guys, these are 3 in a row. I'm talking about the on-ball defender, on the ball handler, off-ball defender, the guy in the corner. And now that they're 3 in a row, if you're 3 in a row, I can't throw the ball to you, all right? So if that situation ever arises, you need to be ready to move. So when he goes 3 in a row and he doesn't move, 14 can't throw the ball to this guy in the corner. Now watch this next clip, this clip we saw earlier. As Davis starts drifting out, 30 Randall avoids 3 in a row by cutting over the top, open layup. You'll see a couple more examples of this right here. Scott Morrison calls this cutting the mouse. Mouse would be a defensive strategy where they're saying, don't bring help, go out to your guy. So on this guy starts fanning out to take away the baseline drift pass. Giannis avoids 3 in a row, ball, on-ball defender, teammate in the corner. As that guy starts drifting out, he cuts over the top, layup or dunk, avoids 3 in a row. Here's a great clip right here. Starts getting down to the corner. He starts drifting out, take away that pass away, cuts over the top, layup. Love that cut. Again, and the concept is avoid 3 in a row. Avoid that 3 in a row.
Hey, Coach, as I hear you talk there, what's so fascinating is the very first thing you said. If you can see the back of your head, you got to be cutting somewhere. And every single one of these examples, it's triggered on the turn of the head.
Yeah. And a big part of that, too, is teaching your guys what to look at. All right. I read a great book. It's actually a book that Tony Bennett had his whole staff read. All right. He had his whole staff read Playmakers Advantage. All right. And the best thing I got from the book is the idea of how they termed these guys playmakers, and they termed essentially the elite decision makers in any sport. And they looked at hockey players, soccer players, basketball players, and they talked about elite decision makers in these evasion sports. And they talked about, they go through a process in their mind of search, find, search, read, execute. My bad. Search, read, execute. And I think sometimes as coaches, we just spend time working on the execution phase, working on the technique or the skill. But in reality, if we just do that, we're neglecting 2/3 of it. Search. What am I looking at? How, in the best of the best, Wayne Gretzky has a great point where he says, people always talk about my vision being God-given. No, it was trained, and he called it Wally-given. His dad's name was Wally. Wally Gretzky was a good semi-pro hockey player, and he said it was Wally-given. And what his dad did was he taught him that idea of what to look at. So the first thing you need to do is you need to teach your players, what am I looking at? Coming off a ball screen, who am I reading? Who am I reading? What am I looking at? Because if I can understand what I'm looking at, then that tells me what read I'm going to make. That's the next phase, read. All right, he does this, I do that. He does that, I do this. Search, read, execute. Search, read, execute. And so with that, Harrison, is he's taught right there. We're teaching our guys, what are you looking at? How do you search? You search by reading your man. Don't stare at the ball. Read your man.
Yeah, coach. I mean, one of our three tenets when we talk about drill work in any sport and soldiers to sidelines, when you teach it, it's eyes. You coach the eyes first, then you coach the center of gravity because that's going to determine your footwork, and then you get to the hands. So in that order, what are you looking at? Yeah. Where's your balance? What are you doing with your hands?
And that's where ultimately I think football coaches are ahead of basketball coaches in a lot of ways. And one way is that's a great example of it. And I know you're saying that's transferable across all sports, but I think a lot of that has to do with your football background, Harrison. That's terrific. All right. Another thing I got from watching Furman. All right. Again, great offensive coach, Bob Ritchie. All right. We all know this. All right. On a ball screen. All right. Something we see a ton. If this guy were to roll to the rim, we know this. We call this a shake or a fill behind. I mean, that's the standard stuff. All right. Any kind of roll, we want to fill behind because we want to get these guys on the backside of the ball screen caught up and sinking into this roll, and all of a sudden maybe we can throw back to a first shot. But as players get more skilled, this guy in this, all of a sudden a pop option is open. This next guy has to read. If this guy rolls, that job's pretty, we just talked about that. He fills behind, all right? But if he were to pop in this situation, the best thing is this to talk about, and I love this. This is a concept it's all over the NBA right now, and Furman does it really well. If this guy were to pop, rather than filling behind, he now becomes the roller, and now he's the guy to put pressure on the rim. So if the screener pops, this next guy becomes the roller. So let's watch a couple examples. You're going to see Furman do it. You're going to see Harrison's alma mater, Johns Hopkins, do it here. You're also going to see some NBA clips. This is Johns Hopkins right here. Again, Harrison, you love that. This next guy, this guy behind the ball screen is reading. If it's a pop, he becomes the cutter. He sees the pop, he becomes the cutter. And as defenses get more sophisticated, I'll tell you why this works. Think about what they're talking about on the defense side of the ball here, all right? They're going to talk about stunting at this shooter, at this screener that's popping, all right? They're going to talk about stunting at this guy. So on this pass back, they're going to talk, here's how their coverage works. As this big is engaged in the screen, this next guy is in charge of stunting at it and getting back to his man. But again, Harrison, remember that idea we talked about, all right? We talked about if your defender leaves, you see the back of his head, you are gone. So now as this guy goes stunt at it, this next perimeter guy is cutting to the rim. So we're going to cut that stunt, and now we're going to pop and dive. There you see it. Now he goes to get back. He's trailing the play. Here's Denver. Denver does this really well at the NBA level. They go under. Easy decision, automatic rescreen. Automatic rescreen, throw back. 14, sees Jokic pop. What's he doing? Watch the stunt. Now he clears. Pretty good defense by 17. Goes with them. But now 0 is in a long closeout. Eyes to the rim. Now he can drive the ball, and he's driving that gap that was just created. Pop and dive. Throw back. Next guy cuts. Again, driving that gap. pop and dive. This guy's reading. If he roll into the rim, he fills behind. Instead, on that pop, he's cut. He becomes the roll man. One other thing I loved about Furman, all right, this is great too. If you have a guy who's a little less skilled, this is a great idea. All right, we call this a Barkley. And I stole this from Lenny Acuff and Doug Novak. Doug Novak's a fantastic Division III coach up in Minnesota. And any guys, the best coaching DVD I've ever seen is the one that Doug Novak sells on his website for $25. Great thing too is it's instant download. You can finish up this clinic right now. You can go onto his website, Coach Doug Novak Basketball or something, and Google it. It'll come up. And you can buy his point of attack finishing for $25. He doesn't make a dime off it. It goes right to his Division III program, all right? And it's instant download. You can be watching that thing 180 seconds after purchasing it. And he calls these Barclays, and I love it. He talks about having protection plans in your drive. If your drive doesn't net what you want, which is a layup, then what is your protection plan? And the two things he talks about is the first thing he talks about is Barkley. And any of you old guys will understand this. Who's that look like? That looks like Charles Barkley. That's a perimeter to a post up. He's driving the ball and he's flipping his hips. Driving his ball, flips his hips into a post up. It's great for guys that aren't great skill level. Here you see 2-on-1 possession. So maybe your guy isn't great at like combination moves or change of direction dribbles. This is something he could be great at. Drive the ball, he's cut off. Rather than, challenging him to make a, between the legs or behind the back at speed, just tell him to flip his hips, protect the ball, and now turn into a post up. Perimeter to post up. A little Charles Barkley move. What's your protection plan? If your drive doesn't net what you want, what are you getting to? Another good concept of that is, as I watch Furman's film, I keep seeing their skill development pop up. I challenge you, watch your film. Are you seeing what you're working on? Are you seeing it pop up? If not, you need to adjust what you're doing in your skill development, because your skill development needs to show up in your film. Another protection plan that Doug Novak talks about, he talks about nashing. You can call it Gretzky, you call it Nash, we call it a hockey, all right? And the idea is just something Gretzky brought to the game of hockey when he went behind the net. So if your drive, when we're driving the basketball, we're trying to drive the ball to score one-on-one, all right? As soon as help comes, we draw a crowd and kick it. We do not want to try to score over help. Write that one down. Don't shoot in crowds. Don't try to shoot over help. We want to draw help and we want to move it. We want to draw crowds and kick. So if I drive the ball, though, and it stays one-on-one and I still don't have what I want, again, what's my protection plan? Because we're not just going to shoot shots just to shoot shots. We want to get what we want ultimately out of possessions. So one protection plan we have is hockey dribbles. Or Barclays. Flip your hips into a post-up. The second thing we have is what we call a Nash. Steve Nash coming underneath the rim and keeping that alive. And there you saw earlier, potentially you could cut that mouse, you cut over the top, or now your Nash. Look at how these guys on a Nash, look at how they just stare at the basketball. Open three. Keep the ball and go underneath the rim. This is such a great concept here. Look at how he keeps it wide open. Watch how these guys just lose it. They stare at the ball, and all of a sudden they lose their man. Get your guards comfortable with keeping the ball all the way through the basket. Get them comfortable keeping the ball through the basket line, all right? I studied Davidson break. I really enjoyed this one. Really enjoyed it. Something I took from Davidson, all right? Watch how they stay with their cutters all the way through to the charge circle. They let their cutters wear the rim as a hat. Look at this guy cut all the way through the charge circle. They're in their secondary right now. Ball's reversed. Watch this guy. Watch how late they hit these cutters. Stay with these cutters, all right? They're going to be open late. Watch these cutters. Hit these cutters all the way through. Stay with their cut. It gets their guy cutting harder too, all right? If he knows that passer is going to look for him on that cut, he will cut harder and he'll cut all the way to wear the basket as a hat. Same concept on your ball screen rolls, all right? Don't, guards, stay with that roll man all the way through his roll, all the way to the rim. Hit that guy late, hit him in the charge circle. He might be open late. Watch how well Charlotte covers this, and watch how open late he is. All right. I mean, that guy does a pretty good job, especially if this guy at the top of the key can't shoot. Watch this screenless defender. He does a very good job opening with this screen. Now, terrible job by the guard defender, by the cutter's defender. But watch how 14 stays with this cutter all the way to the charge circle, and he hits them there with 2 feet in the charge circle. Just a great concept to have in your offensive attack. Stay with the cutter all the way through the charge circle. I love this. This is Tenerife, one of the best coaches in the world. All right. I love this concept from Tenerife. All right. And guys, I can get you this film. When we finish, I'm going to make sure Harrison sends out my contact information. Any of this film you need, I'll get this to you. So if I'm going too fast with some of these set plays, don't worry about it, because you will have access to this film after. All right. I like this concept from Tenerife. We call this a ghost screen, because 1 second you're there, 1 second you're not. You're going to see what I'm talking about. They'll hit to this guy on the right wing, and now this is a stagger away on this catch. This guy comes up from the corner, and he's coming right into a ghost screen. And we call ghost a slip to the perimeter. So for us, a slip is cutting off our screen and stopping our screen and diving to the rim. A ghost for us is cutting off our screen late and cutting to the perimeter. So for us, a ghost is a slip to the perimeter. And watch that driving gap. You're going to see another example of it here. Right wing catch, stagger away, top of the key catch. All right, now watch, passer cutting down to the corner, ghost screen opens up. It's great against switching, really stress tests your switching and your communication strategy. Great against switching. They do a nice job leveling it off. Now it becomes a ball screen. We're trying to reject as many ball screens as we use. They jump to screen. Our teaching point on our rejects, eyes and feet to the screen, ball goes away. Eyes and feet to the screen, ball goes away. That's our teaching point on our rejects. Here he rejects it. Boom, now he's driving it. He draws help. Good job getting back out to spacing. Open 3. All right. The best coaches are thieves. Steal like an artist. Here's Quinn Snyder. You think you might have watched Tenerife film? Stagger, top of the key. Guy comes out of the corner, ghosts it. Donovan Mitchell, big gaps open, driving the ball. All right. We love double drags here at Army. All right. Love double drags. Here's just an example, different stuff you can do off a double drag. Here's one where if you have a skilled player, a shooter setting the second screen in the double drag, all right, this player is going to come off both screens, and now the first screener is going to set a flare for the second screener. This is Johns Hopkins, Harrison, proud Blue Jay alum, probably an illegal, all right, but they get away with it, all right, come off this ball screen, first screener, flares the second screener, open 3. All right. I love this one. Call this an apparition cut. So now it's a double drag, but right before this double drag occurs, the second screener is going to cut and he's going to ghost underneath this screen. Watch this. This one's hard to guard, guys. Hard to guard. He ghosts it underneath it. And watch that. Middle drive. All right. Middle drive, baseline cut. Middle drive, baseline cut. Here's Army basketball doing it. Clear off that corner. Second screener. Ghosts underneath it. Good paint threat. Defense has to collapse. We kick it over the top. One more. We don't want to drive a drive. I'll talk about that with the Raptors. We want to kick. We want to touch the paint. We want to kick it. And we want to go one more on that. Bang. Here's another one. Ghost underneath. Throw back. They're all distorted on that switch. Good shot. Here's another example of it. Ghost underneath. They screw up the switch. Open shot. Again, how can you be creative within your double drags? So there you saw 2 options. First screener screens to the second screener on a flare. Second option would be second screener ghost underneath the action. This we had a ton of success with. This for us was a called slip by the second screener. All right. We don't do a great job of this. here, but anytime we set an empty drag, we want to break the free throw line. We should be coming down. You'll see a good clip of it later. We want to come down. We want to break this free throw line. We want to be free throw line extended down here. We're a little bit too high. So again, what you're coaching, what you see on tape is what you're coaching. So I got to do a better job with that. Here, 14 is the second screener. He slips out of it to the rim, design slip, puts a ton of pressure on this first screener's defender. Because now, does he help on this roll, or does he stay high with the guy behind the ball screen? There, he stays high, and he's wide open on the pass. All right. Concept I love from the Toronto Raptors. I've referenced it already earlier, so I'm glad I can finally get to explain it. All right. They have a rule. Don't drive a drive. What do they mean by that? If the ball is driven in the paint and you are the first guy to receive that pass out of that paint touch, they do not want this guy driving the ball. He's okay to shoot the ball or he's okay to pass the ball, but they don't want this first guy to drive the drive. They want him to catch, and they want him to kick and go to shoot it or go one more. Shooting it's perfectly fine, but they don't want him to catch this ball and drive it. Again, why? Teach the why. Understand this. The place the ball just came from was in the paint. Why would we drive the ball back to where the ball was just balled up? Don't drive a drive. Or another way to phrase it is no back-to-back drives. Now, again, I'll go back to something I said earlier. Good PGC, point guard college concept. Basketball is not a game of never and always. You're not going to tell an NBA player, never drive it. But here's our rule of thumb. We want to touch the paint, we want to kick, and we want to go shot or one more. In that situation, that next guy that gets it, it's his world. He can shoot, he can drive, he can do whatever he wants. But we don't want to have that first guy that catching the ball off a paint touch to drive it. You see the Raptors. I'm going to shut up and let this thing play a little bit. Here's just great examples of it. Ball punches the paint, breaks the paint. We kick it, one more. Paint touch, kick, one more, +1. Make the extra pass, +1. Paint touch, kick, one more. At that point, that next guy to catch it, he can be a driver. He can break the paint there, but they don't want that first guy doing it. Get an advantage, keep an advantage, make the right read, finish. Get advantage, keep advantage, make the right read, finish. It's a simple game. That's offensive basketball, guys. Create advantage, maintain it, make the right read, finish. Bang. Don't drive a drive. Harrison, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about one more concept. I think looks like we have about 5 more minutes. I'm going to talk about one more concept, open up for questions. If none come in, we can hit one more concept after that. All right. The best thing Milwaukee does, the best thing they do offensively is a very simple concept. And you might roll your eyes a little bit when you see this because this is as simple as anything. It's a dribble handoff. But you have to understand how well they execute it and why and when they execute it. So Milwaukee, elite at running with great spacing. So actually this clip's not great because 7 Ilyasova is running through the middle of the paint. More often than not, they run to these 5-out spots and the paint's wide open. And now NBA defense are geared up. They are trying to build a wall to stop Giannis's penetration and transition. What Milwaukee does is they do a very good job of making teams pay for shrinking the court and building a wall and gapping Giannis. Because now when Giannis sees this and he sees this wall, he's going to take his dribble and he's going to veer off his drive and dribble right at a teammate. He sees that guy gapped up. He's going to drive right at a teammate and watch him veer off his drive. Watch these clips. All right. Off misses, they're thinking drive it. This team is backed. Watch this guy. He's gapped up, trying to stop and support the basketball. Now he's going to attack that shrink, and he's going to change the direction of his drive, and he's going to dribble right at his guy. He turns, and he after he hands off, he's going to put pressure on the rim by rolling. All right. You're saying, why don't they just switch this? This is a good example. All right. He's looking at the action. He sees Butler down here gapped. He's shrinking the court. He's going to dribble right at that guy shrinking the court. He's going to dribble right at him. And you're saying, well, why don't they switch it? One, even if they switch it, there's still that gap where you can get that shot off behind the ball screen. I mean, behind that dribble handoff. Now, maybe in the NBA, you don't necessarily have the guys that can that can, that you love shooting that shot, or maybe it's just only a certain number of guys on your roster. But even then, if they lunge out at you, maybe it's a chance for you to turn the corner and drive the ball. So here, we'll keep watching here. Watch him drive at this defender. He's gapped. Watch him drive at those guys. Drive at him. He's going to put pressure on the rim by rolling. And you're saying, like, why don't they just switch this? Well, understand this. Iguodala's guarding Giannis. What's the first thing on the scouting report? Don't let Giannis get downhill. Don't let Giannis get downhill. He just chested a drive. He thinks he did a good job. So now all of a sudden he's in a terrible position now to switch onto that ball, because that's the last thing he's thinking. He's not thinking switch onto this. He's thinking about do whatever I can to keep this ball out of the paint. Harrison, any questions? I see 927.
Yeah, we are good. There's actually a great question here.
What do you got?
A lot of concepts. You're doing your research all around the world. We're seeing Division III. We're seeing Division II. We're seeing Italian basketball or European basketball, NBA stuff. Okay, you bring this into your organization, into your program. How are you going to teach this in practice? Like, would you put up scenarios like Nash and Barkley, for instance? Like, how are you going to teach that with drill work in practice?
So what it's going to be is this. What it's going to be is this. All right, it's going to be it's you just highlighted that I have no life, and so I spend my entire summer studying teams from all over the world. All right, but it's what I love to do. So how would we teach this concept? So Nash and Barkley is this. We talk about what we want on our drives. We want to create an advantage either with our pace or our early action in early shot clock action. All right. As soon as we've created an advantage, we actually talk very selfishly. We are driving the ball to score. I am trying to drive the ball. Once I have an advantage, now I'm not just going to play with it to create an advantage, but we're going to create an advantage either with our action or our pace. As soon as I have an advantage, I am driving the ball to score one-on-one, all right? If help comes, I'm drawing help and I'm moving it. I'm not trying to score over that help. But if that stays one-on-one and I don't have what I like, I don't get to a shot that we practice a lot, we're not just going to take that shot. So my point is this. So then I would say, so if I were to drive the basketball, help didn't come, it stays one-on-one, what are our protection plans? That's what we call them, protection plans. And so there we would say, we would teach it as that. Hey, here are 3 protection plans we have. So what would happen is we would start there with saying we drive the ball and we're scoring on air, executing the finishes we love. All right, now we're scoring against a dummy defense. All right, we're scoring against a dummy defense. Now we're getting the feel of that body, scoring our finishes that we like against dummy defense. All right, next, Harrison, this is where it comes into play. We're going to play it live. But if we don't get what we want on this drive, I'll ask questions. What are 2 things we can do if this drive doesn't get what we want? Hey, coach, we can Nash it. Great. What else could you do? We could Barkley it. Great. So let's play one-on-one, and I don't want to see wild shots. I don't want to see shots outside of our finishing repertoire. So so if we don't have what we want, let's make sure we're getting to Nash's, and let's make sure we're getting to Barkley's. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, it would, because it's like a point of emphasis during live play in practice, right?
And you're teaching guys what to read. Hey, this is when the read comes. That's how human minds work. They work in if-then thinking. If this happens, then I do this.
And this goes back to your very first point that I want to bring every listener back to. This is why you have to film practice, because then if you can watch it with your players, you can make the point here. Did you get what you wanted? What strategy did you employ? And then they can watch the film with you and say, we Nash this, we Barkley this. And you can say, good job, maybe. And then, right, is that how you would give that feedback loop, Coach?
100%. You'd look at that, you'd watch that film, and you ask with questions too. What did you see?
Yeah.
I didn't see help. I didn't see help come over. That's the most powerful question you can ask, guys. Write that one down. What did you see? What did you see? All right. What did you see? Because you asked that question. What did I see? At the time I thought help, I didn't think help came over, but now that I see it, I see help came over on that drive. All right. What should your read have been? And you're making them you're making them tell that to you. And do me a favor, guys. All right. And this is where I've gotten better. So I'm not going to act like we've done this, but we're going to do this moving forward. Don't just ask one person that. All right. Ask that question and say, pause. because your players should be watching film and you should be doing film session with your players to have you should have something to write down with. Because there's no other walk of life when you're learning that you don't have something to write it down with. You know, one constant habit of great successful people is they take notes. Steve Jobs took notes. The smartest person in your class sitting in the front row, what did he do? He took really good notes. How about this? How about the gym you go to? That big guy that's all jacked and has pecs for days, what's he doing? He's taking notes in between reps. He's taking notes in between sets, maybe not reps, but sets. All right. So take notes. So pause. All right. So what did help come on this drive? All right. I'm not just asking Harrison, because if I ask Harrison, Lee's sitting in the back of the room like this and he's not passive. So freeze. Everyone write that down. Answer this question. Yes or no. Write yes or no and circle. Did help come? Yes or no? Yes, help came. All right, great. What do we do when help comes? Write that one down, guys. We kick it. All right. Where did help come from? Who should have passed? Guys, write down who should have gotten the ball right there. Because that makes guys such a more active participant in their learning, because we've all been there. All right. We've all been there. One question's asked and you just look around and be like, shoot, thank gosh they didn't ask me on that one. We'll challenge everyone to do it, because even the act of being an active participant and trying to come up with the right answer and forcing yourself to think about it, that will make you a better thinker and better learner, and it will teach you how to read the game.
100%, Coach. Because like those are two concepts that are critical for teaching that we imbue in all of our soldier coaches. The Socratic Method, use it always, and social learning theory. The people that aren't engaged are learning by observing what's happening. And that's one of my favorite questions in that Socratic Method to engage the rest of the group is to then ask somebody else, would you agree or would you do it differently? Right? They might say, I agree, Coach, I would have Barclayed that too. Or maybe they're like, well, you know what? I saw this. Maybe we would have done something else. And then you never know. That's how you wind up learning as a coach, because you'll be surprised. Your players will teach you something someday. You're like, I never really thought about doing it like that.
No,
it makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I've put my email and my cell phone number into the chat. I'll read off my cell phone real quick. It's 845-905-2076. As soon as this craziness clears, all of our practices are open. Any of our shoot arounds on the road, if you're not necessarily by West Point, if we come near you for a game, anything is open. Our locker room is open, particularly if you are involved with this organization. Particularly if you play a role in the military, then part of our program here at Army West Point is yours. So you are more than welcome. Anything you want to sit on, it is part of it's yours. So if there's any service members on here, understand you have ownership in the Army West Point men's basketball program, and you're always welcome, whatever it is. Anything we can do, please let me know. That's my cell phone. I also put my personal email as well. If there's anything I can do to help, if there's anything we can do to help here at Army West Point, please let me know.
Coach Bovair, thank you so much. Like, honestly, we are so thrilled to have you a part of our Soldiers of Sidelines tribe. You're in it every single day over at West Point, and we are hoping to engage you more, because this presentation, quite frankly, was fantastic. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing, to use Lee's words. And if everybody else watching felt the same way, like this post, share this post. And Zach was talking about, hey, you'll get a copy of this film if you want. Well, it's going to be up on Facebook for the next 10, 15 days. Go back and rewatch it. I challenge everybody right now, take Coach Bovair's advice and watch an hour of film a day. Go back and watch this thing in a couple days. Honestly, because your eyes are going to be a little bit different. And then if you still like it, we could totally appreciate your financial contributions, because just a small donation literally is helping us scholarship hundreds of soldier coaches to do this kind of work in their communities. And it's just a natural fit. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Coach Bovair, Coach Klein.
Appreciate you having me, guys. Be Navy.
Yes. Bye, everyone.